unlike anything ever before known or imagined.
The last few moments of energy that we'll have left with the diesel generator. After that, the lights might go out for a very long time. But maybe at some point in the future, humanity will learn again to use the power grid, and maybe this recording will be still there. I think the chances are better than using a phone or any of the other modern gadgets that have stopped working a long time ago. This is a warning for the future. My parents, they told me that we lived in a world powered by oil and the stuff called gasoline. And then at one point when I was still a kid, it got so expensive that things just stopped working. The stores had no food anymore, and people fled the cities. So we came here to my grandfather's house, where I also found this recorder. My parents are no more, and so is no one I think I used to know. I'm all alone here now. Very soon, the lights are going to go out for good, I guess.
That was a vision of just one possible future. Here in Germany today, we have probably put more time and money into the transformation to a renewable energy infrastructure than any other country of comparable size, but still we are very far away from covering more than a few percent of our overall energy needs that way, especially counting heating and transportation. So you make up your own mind whether that scenario is a likely one or not. But back in our own time, the age of abundance still continues, which gives us the opportunity to learn how to repair and repurpose while our lives here in the West at least might not yet depend on it. So let us see what we can find at the scrapyards here today. A lot of interesting things here in this large container. In the front, a number of big industrial fans that would make no doubt some pretty cool design objects. Unfortunately, there are no guards covering the front of these beasts, making them a little too dangerous. The large motor-powered device there in the background looks like a side channel blower, in German Seitenkanalverdichter. Very expensive piece of equipment, but a little over my weight class at the moment. Here is something that a lot of the guys on YouTube are hunting for at the moment. An old shaper. But unfortunately, the scrapyard owner apparently wants to keep that for himself. Too bad though, it's rusting away in the rain here. But it's already forgotten, because I've just spotted something extremely interesting. Some kind of industrial machine with the covers removed. I spot an air compressor, a large gear motor with a rotary encoder, two pretty chunky stepper motors including the motor driver boards, a small three-phase gear motor with VFD, pneumatic valves, and many other useful parts. The only remaining question is, will I be able to dismantle this here on site? Let's just say I'll keep you in suspense. Going on then. What do we have here? Beautiful old scales from a German grocery store from back in the day, with a beautiful aluminium enclosure and prices still in Deutsche Mark, our old currency. It's a nice decorative piece, but I'll have to give it a pass. And down here, that green part is an induction motor of outstanding build quality, and I will take that home. And here we have some huge screws. Maybe from a drill or a construction machine of some kind. Maybe one could build an Archimedes screw with that. But for what purpose? Or maybe...
Болотоход опускался на землю. Роторно-шнековый движитель делал это транспортное средство уже не супер, а гиперпроходимым. Благогласно имя болотохода. Он как винт мясорубки ревет парящее, он в порядке.
Ah, darn it, I wish I had that idea earlier when I actually was at the scrapyard. Well, one day, guys, one day. And what is that? Says Gedore on there. It's a keeper. This looks like industrial kitchen equipment of some kind. Probably still useful and even valuable, but I have no use for it right now. This massive C-clamp, on the other hand, I will keep. Another huge winch. Judging by those wheels or rollers attached to it, it was probably part of a crane of some kind. Really cool, but way out of my weight class. And here we have a circular saw thingy. Well, actually I have a good idea what that is for. You'll see later in the video. Okay, let's get going then. Here are most of the parts I salvaged from that machine back at one of the scrapyards. What we have here are 3 small Fuji brand variable frequency drives, 2 Vextra stepper motors, plus driver boards here in the front, a small 3-phase gear motor, and 2 Mitsubishi brand motor breakers, some pneumatic actuators, a linear guide rail, a pressure regulator and separator, and some pneumatic valves. I also salvaged the air compressor. And we'll start to reuse some of those components in this video. But before we do that, what kind of machine was this anyway?
De FX3600 is een geheel nieuw type verpakkingsmachine met een ingebouwde weegschaal welke onbegrensde perspectieven opent voor de detailhandel en de supermarkten.
Well, it's a wrapper, weigher and labeler machine by the Teraoka Corporation of Japan. Here featured in a Dutch commercial. And there were more awesome parts in there, but I didn't have the proper tools to salvage any other components. Remember the air compressor I rebuilt on the 3rd episode of this series? It is running well. But it has one issue, and that is that it is very loud. In episode 5, on the other hand, I converted an old German air compressor to a silent compressor with the help of an air conditioner. This time we're going to perform another silent compressor conversion with the other compressor using the very quiet oilless pump we salvaged from that wrapper machine. We start by removing the old oil loop pump from the pressure tank and unscrew this bolt here to loosen the hose that is attached to the new pump, only to remove this 90-degree angle hose barb here. Since there are no wheels anymore, I also install a piece of wood and some rubber feet to level the tank. Now the new oilless pump is removed from its base. It needs to be somewhat modified to be attached to the tank. The part here is shortened with a cut-off wheel, and some of the paint is ground off with the bench grinder. And now the TIG welder is used to merge the 2 parts together. After cooling down, the pump can now be bolted down. And the angle piece from the old pump fit right into the discharge port of the new one. Therefore, the discharge tube is easily connected. Because I don't have any unloader line anymore, I block it for the moment. The motor is a 3-phase induction motor, internally connected in a delta configuration. It was formerly connected to one of the VFDs for some reason, but we are now going to use it on single-phase AC with a capacitor. For that, we will just reuse the capacitor from the old pump. When it comes to determining the required capacitance of a motor capacitor for a given motor, we're often not talking about an exact science, but rather about rules of thumb. In this case, it is most important to have a capacitor of sufficient capacitance, because when it's too small, like the black one here, the starting torque will be too low. And everything is soldered, insulated with heat shrink, and connected to the pressure switch. With the compressor ready to go, let's have a look at the other salvaged pneumatic components then. This part is a combination of a regulator, gauge and separator. A regulator allows you to adjust the air pressure of the air that you take from a pressure tank, for example. The gauge shows that pressure, and the separator's purpose is to separate fluids, like for example water, from the compressed air. It's usually a good addition to any normal shop air compressor setup, but we don't really need it right now. What we have here are two small single acting cylinders that have been connected to each other. And here we have a block of 5 valves with a common air inlet. One of the 5 valves was damaged before I salvaged this, and we might have to do something about the broken valve. The two cylinders are separated. This quick connector port is unscrewed from the broken valve and is instead attached to the inlet. This hose will be used to attach it to our compressor. Now the broken valve needs to be blocked because it's leaking air when put under pressure. In order to do that, and just out of curiosity, I now temporarily remove all the valves from this block of brass. Here I will now simply cut off a piece of rubber and a small piece of aluminium that will press down the rubber on those holes, preventing air from leaking out. And now with the help of two 12-volt batteries, connected in series, we can test the cylinders. And just for fun, I also connected a set of pneumatic cylinders that was sent to me by one of the viewers a while ago. Thanks again for that. And you will see more pneumatics, and then also probably controlled by electronics, once we will use these parts in an actual application. Remember the large wrench that we found lying on the floor? Well, this is not exactly one of those items that I will ever really need, because I don't know if you could tell from the video clip, but it's really big. I removed the rust, and we can clearly see that it was made by Gedore in Remscheid, and yes, that's how you pronounce the name of that company. Gedore, that's for Gebrüder Dovidat Remscheid. Brothers Dovidat, city of Remscheid. It's a number 75 wrench, and Gedore actually still makes and sells these. Even if I don't really need it, I think it's a beauty. Another rusty, rather oversized item we found today is this massive C-clamp. I can't help myself when I find items like this. Even though I'm often not sure I will ever really need them, I'm just fascinated by the design philosophy of overbuilding things so that they will last forever. So many tools these days are built to only handle the bare minimum, and you can tell. So an item like the C-clamp is a reminder that there is another way. So I say collect these items even if you only use them for decoration. They will remind you and others what quality looks like. When restoring items like this that have a spindle of this size, cleaning the threads from old grease, grime and worst of all, metal chips and swarf is often the most tedious part of the job. You don't really want to turn the spindle until you made sure not to force any metal chips into the threads that hold the spindle. Here I'm trying a combination of WD-40, a wire brush, steel wool and a rag. Brake cleaner works well too, but I had just run out of that. and I apply some new grease, and something's gotta give, but it's probably not this clamp. On to the next item then. This circular saw attachment. But attach to what? I have actually now acquired an entire set of these attachments for all kinds of power tools and will show a restoration of this kit as part of an upcoming episode, so stay tuned. And you know the drill, guys, if you like this type of video and want to see more, you absolutely should give this video a like. That way you give me a clear signal to go full steam ahead and produce more. If you want to actively support this channel, making it a lot easier for me to produce new videos, visit my Patreon page and become a supporter.